It's been a most unique year for the 2023 edition of San Diego Comic-Con, an event that's been filled with ups and downs, with the strikes taking the center stage. It's time. Let the fun commence. The Weekend Geeks start right now.
Several major film and TV studios are pulling out of this year's Comic-Con amid the Hollywood writer's strike and the looming actor strike.
Variety reports Disney, Marvel, Lucasfilm, HBO, Sony, Netflix, and Universal will not have presentations in Hall H this year.
Comic-Con could look a little different this year. Already the Writers Guild of America is on strike, and the Screen Actors Guild could soon join the picket lines after voting to authorize a strike in July. And that could mean no panels featuring your favorite movie stars and directors.
July 13th, 2023 will go down as one of the most pivotal moments in the history of film and television. With the authorization for a SAG strike, over 160,000 actors would find themselves on the picket lines.
Yesterday, our union celebrated the 90th anniversary of the incorporation of Screen Actors Guild. During our nearly century-long existence, we've fought for and achieved countless gains for working actors. Today, we embark on a new important chapter in our union's history. Earlier this morning, the SAG-AFTRA National Board convened following 4 weeks of negotiations with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, the AMPTP. Because the AMPTP remains unwilling to offer a fair deal on key issues essential to protecting the livelihoods of working actors and performers, SAG-AFTRA's National Board unanimously voted to issue a strike order against the studios and streamers. But despite our team's efforts, the AMPTP has remained steadfast in its commitment to devaluing the work of our members. Actors deserve a contract that reflects the changes that have taken place in the industry. Unfortunately, the current streaming model has undercut performers' residual income, and high inflation has further reduced our members' ability to make ends meet. To complicate matters further, actors now face an existential threat to their livelihoods with the rise of generative AI technology. We've proposed contract changes that address these issues, but the AMPTP has been uninterested in our proposals.
I am shocked by the way the people that we have been in business with are treating us. I cannot believe it, quite frankly. How far apart we are on so many things. How they plead poverty, that they're losing money left and right when giving hundreds of millions of dollars to their CEOs. It is disgusting. Shame on them. They stand on the wrong side of history at this very moment, because at some point the jig is up. You cannot keep being dwindled and marginalized and disrespected and dishonored. The entire business model has been changed by streaming, digital, AI. This is a moment of history. That is a moment of truth. If we don't stand tall right now, we are all going to be in trouble. We are all going to be in jeopardy of being replaced by machines and big business. Who cares more about Wall Street than you and your family?
At its core, the strike is about much more than wages. It's about the future of the industry, in specific terms of AI and generative AI. The thing that threatens this industry the most. I know that we've all had the opportunity to go to ChatGPT and ask it a question and get a funny response, or we've seen artwork that's been generated by AI. I recently saw a social media post by David Gerald, who was a writer on the original series of Star Trek, and he had this to say: "No AI software is ever going to make us an offer we can't refuse. No AI software is ever going to recognize that there's no place like home. No AI software is ever going to notice that. Nobody's perfect. And the one point that really got me is that the only advantage to AI software is that it will never open a window and shout, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." And it was those points that really drove home the problem that we have with AI and how it's going to ultimately affect everyone, not just the film industry. AI has the problem of, like I said, creating content that it doesn't create. And that's very scary. Recently at a negotiation with SAG-AFTRA and the studios, it was proposed that the studios wanted to take an image or the likeness of an actor and have an irrevocable license good for the remainder of time. This means that basically you put the actor out of work. It puts an end to residuals because that license gives them the ability to use that likeness in any way they want. So now we'll have AI movies created in an office, and the actor will have no say in how they really perform. And it's scary to see how some of this has gone down. A few years ago, we had deepfakes that came out, and it really showed how good AI was getting. And now you can clone someone's voice, you can make an image of them, all with just asking a computer to train itself on images that exist or speech patterns and different things that are out there. That just makes the whole concept of AI scary, and I just don't know where we're going to head with that. But we know that San Diego Comic-Con did face a lot of problems as a result of the strike, and I don't think it's good to point the finger at SAG. They're simply responding to the fact that there were issues there that had to be addressed. This is a historic strike for the industry. It comes down to AI, like I said, but also wages. And having a fair wage is something that everyone should expect for the time that they put in. Well, coming up on the Weekend Geeks, we're going to take a look at how the strike affected Comic-Con and our review of the show itself. Up next on the Weekend Geeks. I've often been asked why I attend San Diego Comic-Con, and the answer may surprise you, but it's not so easy to explain. There's magic and mystery about attending an event with 130,000 of your closest friends. It's that magic that just keeps me coming back year after year. And I know what you're going to say about this review. We're a little late getting it to you, but I hope that you enjoy our look at this year's convention. This year's Comic-Con adventure began like years past, with a long 1,700-mile trek from Louisiana all the way to San Diego, California, with a couple of stops in between. We arrived late Monday afternoon and began the process of preparing mentally and physically for what the week would have in store. This would be Eric's first San Diego Comic-Con, so his preparations had to be even more involved. But first, before our Comic-Con adventure would take place, we had to visit the San Diego Comic-Con Museum. The museum is located in Balboa Park and offers a rotating display of pop culture-related exhibits with a mission to create public awareness and appreciation for comics and related popular art forms. This year, there was a special tribute paid to the legend Stan Lee. Stan's involvement in the comic industry in his 77-year career helped pave the way and shape what we see today in the form of things like the Marvel Cinematic Universe and, well, Comic-Con. It was legends like he and Jack Kirby who put comic books in the forefront. In addition to all things comic-related, there was a special exhibit for animation. Attendees had the opportunity to experience the process of creating animation in film and television, with a special emphasis placed on storyboarding and stop-motion photography. One interactive area caught our attention where we were able to create our own custom animation without the use of computers.
Well, we'll be back with more of the Weekend Geeks right after this. That's all. That's terrible.
Our stop at the Comic-Con Museum would only be a small taste of what was in store for the remainder of the week. After that, we would make our way back to the convention center, where it was time to pick up our badges and other goodies, and join fans for Comic-Con. Picking up our complimentary items, such as the bag, lanyard, and program book, is a great way to get a head start on the week's schedule of events. Although the schedule was already released, many attendees take the opportunity to visually go through and see what is available. With all of the changes that happened this year as a result of the strike, it was necessary to make alternative arrangements for maximum enjoyment.
With my bag and lanyard and all the goodies in hand, we're on to the next part of San Diego Comic-Con, and that's preview night. Let's go take a look.
After picking up these items, it was time to start exploring the rest of downtown San Diego and get some much needed rest, because Comic-Con starts tomorrow.
We're back right after this on the Weekend Geeks.
There is something magical about the beginning of Comic-Con that is instilled in everyone who attends. It's often hard to explain because excitement and adrenaline take over many hours leading up to preview night. When waking up that morning, you just know that you're in for a treat, and the excitement is just going to continue to build throughout the day. When thinking about how to review the show, normally I would take it day by day. But because this year's event was so different, I've chosen to talk about our various experiences overall. While Comic-Con is known for its lines,
Here we go!
This year it seemed as if those lines were never ending. With the previous announcements of a slimmed-down Hall H schedule, many of the panels that normally attract a large audience was not held. This led to more people having time to visit the show floor and off-sites. In fact, on the days leading up to the convention, the registration for these events or activations became impossible as so many people were adjusting their schedules to attend these. Many people would find themselves having to utilize standby lines in order to visit many of the events. But inside, the line was just as long for many of the booths, with some of them remaining capped throughout the entire day. We're looking at you, Jazzwares. Walking through the show floor on Wednesday night was no different than walking through any other day, as it seemed as if the crowds were much more dense, and rightfully so. In fact, many vendors throughout the convention reported record-breaking sales, with more people visiting their booths than ever before or in recent memory, depending on your stance. Many attendees called this convention a return to normalcy for what was Comic-Con of the old days, with more of an emphasis on comic books than popularized media. Even though the lines were long, Eric and I were still able to find ourselves engulfed in some of our favorite activations, including the Star Trek Strange New Worlds exhibit at the Paramount Plus booth. This booth invited attendees to boldly put themselves in the captain's chair for an out-of-this-world video experience. Following up with this trip to the captain's chair was an experience where you got to be placed on an alien world, something similar to the AR wall tech used in filming of the show. This was probably the coolest thing that I saw on the show floor, but hey, what can I say? I'm definitely a Star Trek fan at heart. Moving on in the booth was also a look at some of the costumes and elements from Strange New Worlds, and a look at a version of the USS Enterprise, which I was told cost approximately $15,000. Isn't this ship beautiful? This was just one of the many ships on display at Comic-Con, all showcasing exquisite detail and craftsmanship. Paramount really brought out the activations this year with not only Star Trek, but the Good Burgers 2 film and Ghost, along with the Lodge offsite. Inside the Good Burgers area, attendees received a complimentary poster and an opportunity to play a game where they could win a Good Burgers limited edition pin. While over at the Ghost activation, it provided attendees with a complimentary shirt and hat. Outside of the convention center, there were many activations that were peppered throughout downtown San Diego. For years, businesses have been leasing out their space for official functions and events, and sometimes you can find activations that are not even on the schedule. This year, we attended 3 different activations from AMC, NBC, and Paramount, and we'll start with the Lodge. Last year, Paramount brought the 10 Forward Lounge to downtown San Diego, and they follow suit this year with a more robust experience with several other franchises from Transformers and SpongeBob to Star Trek. Of course, we would have to participate in the Star Trek area, where artists were creating caricatures, putting attendees inside the Star Trek universe. These talented individuals really made an effort to make these images look great. Hey, that looks just like me, I would say. Oh, and here's a look at Eric's photo. Quite interesting. Beyond just Star Trek, Paramount provided complimentary food and beverage items throughout this experience. The lodge attendees were given 50 minutes to find their way throughout the many areas before departing. The other experience that we really enjoyed was that of the AMC and Rice Immortal Universe activation. This activation was so well organized, and hats off to AMC for their impressive organization skills. Inside the activation, fans were brought back to New Orleans for a taste of the late 1700s. It felt like I was transported back to Louisiana, where I would find myself in the French Quarter, on somewhere like Royal or Canal Street, maybe even Bourbon Street. The only thing missing from this experience were beignets and coffee from Café du Monde. Inside this activation, we were treated to a mocktail and a presentation on the elixir of immortality.
Food carré here at the heart of our fair city. Now, you may have heard the reputation of the old square and the Storyville. Well, we locals, we have our another name for it. We call it the Street of Immortality. Ooh, and you is about to see why. Now, it's one of the great mysteries of the 20th century. Yeah, I'll do this first, just to show you that it is safe.
With Prohibition being a major part of this time period, the presentation was cut short after we enjoyed this tasty beverage. Once back outside, we saw plenty of actors in costumes, and a well-thought-out immersive experience was found. This by far showcased what fun things you get to see at Comic-Con that you can't find anywhere else. And for the last experience, and the one that we were not so excited about, was the NBC Quantum Leap experience. As the story goes, Ziggy's mainframe computer has been hit with a virus, throwing TV timelines into disarray, and it is our job to help put it back in place. Attendees are transported into 3 different areas, including The Voice, Law & Order, and the Chucky universe. Yes, the crazy doll for some reason. By far the most well-done portion of this attraction was the Law & Order area, where you had to find clues to help solve the murder, just like on TV. And at the end, you were treated with the famous closing credits. While some might find this cheesy, I thought it was a great addition to the activation. Inside the activation, you were also put into the Quantum Leap system, where attendees got videos of themselves enjoying what was there. At the conclusion of the activation, fans received a limited edition pin for their work.
Whew, way to go. You made it back in one piece. I heard things got a little jumpy in the Chucky timeline, but don't worry, we snagged a photo. For science. I know leaping across space and time isn't easy, so as a thank you for your bravery, the team at Quantum Leap headquarters made you a little something for, saving the fate of the universe and all. I've confirmed with Ziggy that the timelines have been realigned and you've leaped back to San Diego Comic-Con 2023. And please remember your mission, my mission, to put right what once went wrong. Like the time I leaped back and convinced them to name the show The Voice instead of Spinny Chair Sing Song Show. Not a good title. Anyway, see you soon for season 2.
Speaking of activations and experiences, this year we were able to check off yet another item, and that was hosting not 1, but 2 panels. This year we hosted the panel, Is the Orville the Greatest Sci-Fi Show on Television? The panel was hosted by myself and Eric, along with channel friend Owen Cotter of scifiction.com and superfan Marcia Middleton, who I met just a few years ago at a previous San Diego Comic-Con.
Hey Orville fans, I hope to see you Friday for our panel, Is the Orville the Greatest Science Fiction Show on Television? It's going to be right here in Ballroom 10 of the Marriott for San Diego Comic-Con 2023. We'll see you right here. I got plenty of seats available, so I hope to see all of you. Plus, got some standing room.
It was great to share the stage with these individuals, and we had a blast discussing and debating the topic. While I don't think we answered the question, it was still fun to see so many people in the room who also enjoyed the Orville. Do you have a favorite episode from the series? Let me know in the comments below. Now, here are some highlights from that panel.
I keep going back to it, but the first episode and the finale of season 3 were 2 totally different shows.
Yeah, for sure.
Completely. And when I watched it just a couple days ago to remind myself, they had comedy with this guy putting he had put his drink on the bridge and talking about drinking a beer and all that. Sure. They didn't they took some of that comedy out as they went.
Right.
And that to me shows a maturing show. Mm-hmm. We use mature a lot.
I mean, because look at one of the things, tricks in my head. Remember the trick they played on Isaac, where he doesn't have features? What did they turn him into?
Yeah.
I mean, who didn't laugh at that? I was like, if I was eating popcorn, it would have been all over the floor. I was like, okay, this is really funny. But then they move to more and more and more. And that kind of what gets a person into the show and brings the heart to it.
So I've been a Star Trek fan, Star Wars fan all my life. And it's... The Orville, I don't think, has had enough time to be quite as good as, say, the original Star Trek, the original series. But given that time, hopefully, everybody cross your fingers, it could be. Is it the greatest sci-fi show on TV right now? It's got a lot of competition. I would say, For All Mankind would be Andor. How many of you? Well, this is not one of the. Will not be the greatest sci-fi show. How many fans of Resident Alien do we have in here? That just crossed my mind. If you haven't watched it, it's on Sci-Fi. It's great. But given time, if you like the Orville, you'll love Resident Alien. It's sci-fi with comedy.
It's based off a graphic novel, right?
Yeah, and
it's got Alan Tudyk in it.
Alan Tudyk.
Come on,
Firefly fans, watch Alan Tudyk. But given time, the Orville can be in that league with Star Trek and Doctor Who and some of those, I think.
Originally, I was unaware, but we did have a member of the Orville crew with us at this panel. Marie Chisholm, costume designer from season 3, came up to the stage to share some of her insights from her time on the show.
My background, I have a lot of experience building like superhero suits and manufacturing with lots of molding pieces and 3D printing, and so I brought that into that costume because I wanted to have a bit more of that, less of the man in a suit feel. Mark Jackson does an amazing job wearing that costume, and it's so hard, as an actor having to have a helmet on, and we've got fans running and lights going, and so it was a big engineering feat to figure out how to retool it. But the heart of it, I feel like, worked out in terms of keeping his still slightly nostalgic feel still there, I think, because that's kind of what the original intent was.
We have a link to the full panel in the description below. They say opportunities come at Comic-Con like none other, and I was again thrilled to have the opportunity to join Marcia and her sister Sheila, along with Eric, for a discussion on the show Manifest. Last year, I was invited to be on the panel as we discussed the resurrection of the show, where fans actually made it possible for the show to continue on Netflix. With its conclusion, we finally got to discuss all the juicy details of the series that we have thought about for so long.
But later on, and one of the reasons why is because of the other guy whose name is the guy that she was seeing while she thought her husband was away. Oh, Danny. Thank you. Yes, Danny. I knew that. I was just testing you. No, Danny. So Danny, handsome guy. He was right there. He helped with Olive. You kind of liked him too. But those scenes when Grace put Ben out of the house, I was crying. I thought, oh my gosh, woman, send him to my house,
Oh, hold up now. Hold up. For those of you who did see the finale, and spoilers ahead, how interesting was it to see that everyone got their lives back from the time that they originally were supposed to land? Again, we showcased videos from series creator Jeff Rake, where he explained how things were all connected and how the relationships seen in the final season were always supposed to happen, and we just had to get there.
I'll just say, remember the very beginning. Remember Romans 8:28, I'll paraphrase. All things work together for good, for those who are the called. And I think our heroes found that journey ended up coming true for them.
With all of these panels now concluded, I hope next year we will again be able to host maybe even more panels. Who knows what will happen? Some of the most exclusive things you can get at Comic-Con are not necessarily merchandise, but rather autographs from cast members. In years past, I was able to grab an autograph from the cast of The Orville and Gotham, among other shows present. And in previous years, Warner Brothers has hosted cast signings from Game of Thrones and some of the other larger properties that they have in their wheelhouse. However, this year was quite different.
Well, normally it is these tables behind me that you can get limited signings at. But with the SAG strike this year, it makes it almost impossible for fans to be able to get some of the more interesting autographs from the celebrities and people that they admire the most. And that's been the narrative behind this year's Comic-Con. It's what and how has the SAG and the writer's strike affected how this show will go on. Well, let's continue our coverage of San Diego Comic-Con.
You have to consider SAG guidelines that specifically forbid actors from participating in promotion of a film studio. This means the studio cannot hire them to promote anything at any event. This is also why you will see most actors not supplying photographs at conventions. This doesn't mean that there were no actors at Comic-Con. It just meant that studios did not have the publicity that they normally rely on. This year, while we were eager to receive autographs, they were very sparse and did not come from studio functions, but rather individual booths or other projects, like that of David Dismalchin, who is on hand to promote his comic book and independent film, or the cast of Big Nate, who are voice actors and not necessarily under the SAG strike authorization. We also met Grimlock voice actor Greg Berger, who was on hand at the Hasbro booth for the release of the Grimlock flagship collectible.
Me Grimlock no bozo, me seamlessly synchronized Robo-Sun Transformer robot!
Beyond actors, we also saw plenty of comic book artists and writers and creators who work day to day to bring some of our favorite stories to life. So it was not all of the doom and gloom some had speculated. One area of great concern was Hall H and how the strike would affect panels, and we saw that effect with the Star Trek Universe panel that normally showcases cast members from the various series. Last year, we got to see Sir Patrick Stewart and the cast of Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds. This year's panel was moderated, if you call that, by Scott Mantz, who did his best with what he was given. The audience was then given an early look at the crossover episode between Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks. The episode was a great endeavor to bring about two entirely different series together under one roof. The last time this was done was the horrible series finale of Enterprise and the return of Commander Riker and Counselor Troy. We were also given a sneak peek at the first 5 minutes of the 5th and final season of Star Trek Discovery. At the conclusion of the panel, it was announced that we would all receive a complimentary poster from Subspace Rhapsody, the musical episode. The instructions to the audience of 5,000, and wait for it, was to go to the Paramount booth to receive your complimentary poster. And that is when the gates of Hades was opened. The show floor at Comic-Con is traditionally very crowded on a Saturday afternoon, regardless of what is happening. When you invite the entire audience from Hall H to the booth, you should be prepared for the insanity that is to come. Paramount was not, and they were not prepared for the amount of people that would surround the booth, and it became evident that no one was going to receive this exclusive poster. As time went on and tensions began to build, many people started pushing others to try to force Paramount's hand in giving out these posters. It was at that point that the fire marshal, who was standing right behind me, if I might add, called for immediate backup and the closure of the entire booth. Security then came and required that everyone vacate the vicinity or risk being thrown out of Comic-Con. This was a very poorly planned operation, and I'm not sure who thought that having 5,000 people show up at the booth would be a good idea. Later in the afternoon, a sign was placed at the booth telling folks that posters were no longer available and that all had been given out. We know that was not the case. Please, Paramount, I'm begging you next year, don't do this. There are plenty of other ways to give out exclusive items, including the fulfillment area that most panels utilize. I would have to say it has been many years since I have felt this compact in one area of the show floor, and I hope to not experience that again. Well, that was a convention. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to unfold with everything that was happening in terms of the industry. A lot of people said it's just going to be doom and chaos and doom and gloom everywhere. And oh my, San Diego Comic-Con is going to fail. But it absolutely did not. This year, it was exciting to see so many people on the show floor. It compacted everybody into areas that made it a unique experience. We all thought this was going to be the year that Comic-Con really got back to being the awesome, full-blown show that it was prior to 2020. For the most part, everyone is back to living their lives the way that they had been. So this should have been that return, but with everything that's going on, with the strikes and all of that, it just made the show different. And if there's a word for the show, I would have to say it's different. We had a lot of fun just doing everything that we could and rolling with the punches. And that, for me, that's the sign of a good show, a show that's active, one that is able to roll with the punches, able to create solutions based on a problem and not make it their forefront. And that's what attendees at Comic-Con do well, and that's what the planners of Comic-Con do well. Ultimately, it's your responsibility as an attendee to make a convention wherever you go yours. You're the one who decides your fate on this. You have to tell yourself that you're going to have a great time no matter what. And that's what we did this year. We made every facet of it fun. I had a great time seeing Marcia again this year and seeing Owen and having Eric for the first time ever go to a Comic-Con. That says something. It may be because I don't relent whenever I ask people to join me, but for years, I have asked Eric to come to this convention and experience what it is. Yes, there is a lot of walking. Yes, you are up many hours of the day, but it is a unique experience. You can go to conventions like Dragon Con or New York Comic-Con or some of the Showmasters events in London and overseas, and you'll find that these conventions are all different. They all have something unique to them. Dragon Con is a convention that's based solely on having a good time and seeing people and going to programs. Whereas Comic-Con is about experiences. It's about going to Hall H and seeing these actors from some of your favorite shows, being there to see it in person. And ultimately, that's what makes Comic-Con so unique and so coveted as the convention to go to. Everyone said, this year is going to be doom and gloom, and this is the end of Comic-Con, but it definitely was not. We had a great time. I'm looking forward to what is going to be 2024. We've already made plans for going next year, and I've already started working on panel ideas, and I hope that I'll be able to bring others with me so that they too can experience what Comic-Con is all about. Well, on that set of unfortunate news, I end the show a lot of times and I say on that set of unfortunate news, but is it really? Is this unfortunate news? No, the review of Comic-Con shows that the event was great, except for Paramount, which we'll have to deal with that later. But all in all, it was a great convention, and I hope you've enjoyed this. I'll see you next time. Good night.